That's what drives everything is wealth. To really focus on brands. Like, are you using these brands? Are you using that brand? That's definitely a big part of US society. I don't know. I would disagree with him there. What is up? Welcome back. Today I'm reacting to a video titled 3 American Myths We Don't Believe Anymore After Living in Europe. I'm an American, and I'm curious where exactly they live and also what are these myths? Like, I just have to know. So that's why I clicked on the video. What is up? If you haven't met me yet, my name is Aaron and this is Aaron Arnold Reacts. Through this channel, I'm discovering everything about Europe, the people, the culture, the sports, the food, anything you can imagine. The goal of this channel is to laugh together, to learn together, and to have fun together. I post videos every single day, trying to understand and explore Europe even more. So if you want to join me, make sure to hit like and subscribe. Now let's see these 3 myths.
There are 3 beliefs about life in the US that Americans, including us, tend to grow up with.
Okay.
I think we didn't even realize the extent to how ingrained these ideas are in the psyche of Americans until after we left the US.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's almost a little like brainwashing.
A little bit. But now that we live abroad in France, we realize that
France.
these almost universally held American beliefs aren't really so true.
I have no idea what they're going to talk about, but I can't wait to see.
Hi, I'm Raina.
I'm Jason.
And we're Bagot Bound.
When you grow up in the US, you're surrounded by American flags. You recite the Pledge of Allegiance every day in school, right? And you're told both directly and indirectly all the time that the US does everything the best. But then when you move somewhere else, for us it was France, you realize that lots of other places in the world actually do a little better.
I mean, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, the US definitely doesn't do everything correctly. Like, definitely doesn't do the best at every single thing. I'm curious, though, what specifically they're talking about. They're talking about bread, because I know France is known for that.
Yeah, it sounds so ridiculous and egotistical, I know. But when you grow up in a country as big and as isolated from other countries as the US is, you just really, genuinely don't know and haven't seen anything different.
Yeah.
Then when you do see those other places and you realize, like, whoa, there's places where people have like universal high quality healthcare and affordable education, and it's statistically much safer than the US. Like,
That's so true. I mean, that's so much of Europe, right? Like, especially for me, the biggest thing is the safety. The safety, I mean, thinking about raising a family, you gotta have a safe place. And it's sad that in the US, people have to worry about that so much.
it really just shocks your American brain.
Yeah.
There's also this like weird, pervasive belief that because the US is the greatest country on earth,
Okay.
they haven't figured it out. Probably no one has.
Yeah. This can
Really? I've never, maybe that's their perspective. I honestly have never heard someone say that, though. Like, oh, well, if America can't figure it out, then nobody else can. I've never heard someone say that, but, fair enough.
include some really basic things, even like basic water sanitation.
Yep.
We had friends and family that
Okay.
came and visited us here in France recently, and they had to ask if they could drink the water. They'd actually brought
Really?
with
What?
them a whole set of advanced water purification equipment, and they
in
were
case.
brushing their teeth with bottled water at first before we could talk to them and assure them the tap water is perfectly safe.
France.
Yeah, that's so true. That's one really big thing that America needs to clean up, the tap water. I mean, it's so true. Certain states have really clean tap water, specifically like up north, but most states do not. So that's definitely a fear that Americans have. You just drink bottled water. That's what I grew up drinking.
France is another advanced country.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we thought this was actually even more funny
Yeah.
because Avion water from Avion, France sells in the US for like $5 a bottle. And so when you're in the US, you can drink French water, but not when you're in France. I don't know. Struck us as a little funny.
Yeah.
Okay.
Another commonly held American truism is that Americans are somehow just more free than people in other democracies. Even our national anthem, which we sing all the time, it includes the line, the land of the free, the home of the brave. But what does that land of the free actually mean?
Right.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, I think it depends on the person, right? Some people have different opinions. Some people would say this or that. I'm curious, so what's going to be their argument on this side?
What liberties exactly do people have in the U.S. that they don't have in so many other places around the world? Not long ago, we heard someone describe the difference in how Europeans and Americans view freedom.
Okay.
It really struck home. It really captured the spirit of, I think, what we've observed here. I think that Americans want the freedom the freedom to carry a gun, to do what they want when they want, to practice their religion openly, to choose how to spend all their money.
Yeah, and the contrast to that was the idea that Europeans are looking more, they see freedoms from. So freedom from the threat of violence, freedom from dying lack of due to healthcare, freedom from having a religion imposed on them, freedom from pollution and toxins in their environment and food.
Wow, okay. That's a really interesting argument. I've never heard of that angle, actually. I mean, it's true. Like, Americans want the freedom to purchase any cereal they want, the freedom to purchase any soda, the freedom to choose their doctor, everything. It's true. Freedom to, freedom from. Okay. I can see the argument there.
Food. So, I don't know. We were talking about this concept of what American freedom is. Feels like it's become really extreme in the last few years. Meaning in the US now, like, certain groups expect their own personal freedoms to trump everything else, no matter the cost to society or their fellow Americans.
Yeah, and as an American, the intensity of this individualism, I think it can color how you view the policies of the other countries out there.
Definitely.
Because you don't always realize or have the context to realize that these policies, they might mean different forms of freedom and still make for a more stable, fair, open, and enjoyable society.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. I think just in general, Europe's known as having such a high quality of life compared to America. I think maybe that's what the whole gist of this is that Europe has such a high quality of life with the healthcare, with the education, these kind of things they're mentioning. And I can see that argument, definitely. I mean, Europe's amazing. I love Europe. So obviously I can see that, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, lastly, the thing that has changed that we see differently now is quality of life and how we define
Here we
it.
go. Here we go.
In the US, when we lived there, versus now in France and Europe. When I was a kid in the US, my definition of, like, what quality of life or growing up and being able to have a good life was, it kind of revolved around how much money I could make when I grew up.
So
That
true.
sounds
I mean, that's so true. Like, in the U.S., that's what drives everything is wealth. I mean, that's part of the American dream, right? Like, this idea that you can be nobody and become somebody. That's really what America is meant to be all about. And it's true rat race. Like, corporate America is crazy. You work crazy hours every day. You don't have the vacation. You don't have the maternity leave. A lot of these liberties and freedoms that you do have in Europe. So yeah, let's see what she has to say.
embarrassingly materialistic. And it kind of is. But, I mean...
It's definitely a consumer market. Like, people really spend and spend and spend and spend in America.
I mean, the honest thing is to be able to buy more, bigger, nicer, better things. It's just like a big focus of American culture. You see it on TV and movies and advertisements. So, I mean, that soaks in even when you're a kid. The house you can buy, the car you can drive, the size of the TV you have. If you buy your clothes or your candles from, like, certain shops,
it's true, yeah.
all kind of paints a picture and defines if you have a good quality of life in U.S. culture.
Yeah.
True, it's really focused on brands. Like, are you using these brands? Are you using that brand? Do you have the new, I don't know, fidget spinner or whatever? These common, like, trendy things. Are you up to speed? Basically, that's definitely a big part of U.S. society.
I think, and maybe in other words, being visibly wealthy is just a stand-in for quality of life in the U.S. So I think American people will sometimes say that the quality of life is lower in Europe. And why?
I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that. I think I would always hear Americans say that the quality of life is better because they see the Europeans, always on vacation, always sitting for a couple hours for a coffee, enjoying delicious foods. I mean, that's what I think of when I think of Europe, is all these amazing things. So I don't know. I would disagree with them there.
Because that's what you can see. Europeans tend to make less money, have lower incomes. They live in smaller houses. They have fewer cars. They have tiny refrigerators. There's often no clothes dryers. What kind of place is this?
See this video.
Yeah. But we've come to understand that Europeans tend to have, I think they tend to be wealthier than Americans in two really distinct ways that might be hard to see from the outside, but probably define quality of life better than a simple GDP number or, the number of seats in your SUV might capture. I think Europeans tend to have both more time and more peace of mind.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. That's what I was talking about a minute ago. More vacation, more maternity leave, paternity leave. Even like from my understanding in Europe, when you get off work at 5, you're done. You are done for the day. You don't have to clock in. In America, you have to wait till the boss leaves. You're not leaving until that boss leaves. If you do, that you're not getting the promotion. It's really this rat race. So, okay, I see what he means there.
Yeah. I mean, I am not saying in any way that the French or Europeans in general they don't have worries, or they're like sitting around eating bonbons, or they never want to buy some, Air Jordans or an American-sized fridge.
Yeah.
None of that. But there's one really big difference, I think, that we've seen, and that is Europeans tend to have a value system around personal time and a social system that around basic human needs that support well-being.
Yeah, those two things, they come together for a quality of life that might be really hard to value on a graph or a balance sheet, the way you could, the stuff maybe in your house could be captured.
Yeah.
And what does those two things look like in France? There's just a deep respect for your free time to be able to spend with family and to do things for pleasure or maybe just intellectual interest.
Yeah.
Okay.
This might mean...
I think that's true. I think a lot of Europeans really value that alone time, whether it's reading a book, whether it's going on a walk, knitting, gardening, those things. Like, I just think they do a lot more of that. America's very quick. So it's nice to hear that about Europe, really.
Mean that businesses...
By the way, if there's anything in here that you want to touch on or point out even more, contrast between US and Europe, I would love to hear it. So please write it below. Also, if you think it's on the right track, let me know. Really, I'd love to hear from you.
Are open for fewer hours, that work weeks are a little shorter, and workers generally get 5 weeks of vacation per year. And this all adds up to like more time for meals with family, or access to high quality food. These are all things that are seen as essential parts of life.
Yeah.
I'm also not up at night worrying about how am I going to pay and buy my insulin? How am I going to pay for my daughter's education going forward?
So, again, it's not that life is easy, but there's a sense of ease and safety that I feel here in France that was just missing in the US.
Okay.
And this peace of mind feels worth way more than that overpriced Pottery Barn.
Do you think it's just novelty, her being in Europe, that she's having this experience? Like, she's new to this and it's all great and amazing? Or is it like genuinely this amazing?
Comforter ever did in the US.
Yeah, wealth as the US glamorizes it with more and flashier stuff. It just doesn't look the same to me now. And overcoming the idea that no one anywhere does anything better than the US, that Americans are somehow freer, or that America is the only place to find a high quality of life. These are all just myths that living abroad has kind of dismantled for us.
Yeah. So, if you're hesitating to make the jump to live abroad, but it's your dream, don't let these internal beliefs that we as Americans kind of all get brainwashed into our whole lives. Don't let that stop you, because you know what? You're American. You're very optimistic. You can do anything. And sometimes that means moving. Thanks for watching.
A biento.
Amazing. That was great. I really like to hear their perspective. Yeah, I'm curious though, my European friends, what do you think about this? Were these Americans spot on? Is worth moving to Europe as an American worth it? There's so many Americans already in Europe, especially traveling, right? I know Europeans a lot of times are tired of Americans, but anyways, it's really interesting to hear this. I know myself that the quality of life in Europe is so much better. It's really an amazing place that's built for family life. It's built for an individual to blossom and to be themselves. And I think it's true that America, you do get caught up in this who has more money, this rat race culture. Yeah, well, anyways, if you want to see another video just like this in the future and keep exploring the differences between the US and Europe, make sure you hit like and subscribe. I'm going to keep these videos coming. I post every single day. So I hope you'll join me in the next one. Cheers.